France is in serious trouble, their economy is in turmoil, and Macron is getting desperate. And by now, we know the cause of the French riots. But we have to talk about the economic damage. France is on the brink of a recession. Q1 GDP is up by only 0.2%. And if Macron can't control the chaos, the country will burn again. And so far, the riots have cost the country over $1 billion in damages just to businesses alone. Tourists are also cancelling their vacation plans, which is terrible news for Paris. And let's try to quantify the damage because it's truly horrific. Just amongst private enterprises alone, you have 200 businesses looted, 300 bank branches smashed, and 250 stores destroyed. And if you're an investor or business owner, you'll be terrified of opening shop in France. Even if you are covered by insurance, premiums are going to go through the roof because riots are becoming more frequent. Let's remember, guys, this is the second riot in 3 months after the pension protests. And so far, almost 6,000 claims have been filed to French insurers, totaling over 300 million euros. And this just piles more pressure on the economy. But it isn't just companies or stores getting destroyed. Everyday people are getting screwed as well. In the first 5 days of the riots alone, almost 5,000 cars were burned. In just a single day, 2,000 cars went up in flames. So now the victims can't even get to work. You have to spend even more money to get a replacement. What we are seeing is all the social issues exploding in France. There's a lot of migration issues and social inequality. They are just coming out of the woodworks. Now, I've been to France before, I've traveled around Paris, and the wealth gap there is tremendous. You can have a Ferrari driving past the Louvre and a homeless person just a few streets away. I'm not kidding you. And that was 9 years ago. And I believe things have just gotten worse. And if we look at the protest hotspots, we can see it's the banlieues or the suburbs they are burning. Those are the poorest regions in the country. And this is how bad things are. About 57% of children there are living in poverty. And that's 3 times higher than the national average in France. And if you're trying to claw your way out of poverty, it's near impossible. According to a think tank, residents are 3 times more likely to be unemployed there. You can kiss goodbye to social mobility. So Macron has to stabilize the French economy. He must fix the situation or more riots could erupt. He can't afford to let France collapse into a recession. But that is tough. The endgame for France could actually be a recession after all. Putting up a story from Bloomberg, French economy probably saw 0.5% contraction in the second quarter. The June data points to a contraction in manufacturing and services. And this is grim news. If this is true, France might have already entered the start of recession, and that is even before the riots. Now, this shouldn't be surprising. We are entering a global recession, the economy is slowing down, and France is not immune. The French PMI is plunging well below the 50 level into contraction zone. It is now at 47.3, showing a drop across both the manufacturing and service industry. And because of the riots, this outlook is going to worsen. If you have cities and towns across France going up in flames, this is going to hit both production and demand. And the big question still stands. Will France slip into a recession? France is the 7th biggest economy in the world, with a GDP of nearly $3 trillion. It is also the 2nd largest economy in the EU, just behind Germany. And if France falls, we're going to see a ripple effect spread across Europe. So will the French economy collapse? The best place to start is the cost of living in France. Food inflation has started to come down in July. The French government has managed to get food companies to actually slash prices, and that is a good thing. Inflation in France is dropping fast. It is now at a 14-month low of 5.3% in June. So the situation isn't as bad as the UK, which is at 8.3%. But remember that France doesn't control their own interest rates. It is set by the ECB. Even though their inflation is moderating, countries like Italy still have a big problem. Their inflation is almost 7%, which is still very high. And the ECB has warned many times that more rate hikes are coming, and they're going to stay high for the next 2 years. And as interest rates go higher, it slows down consumption. So spending in France is going to crash further. But it is not just a matter of interest rates. The French economy is at risk of a recession because the riots could crater their service sector. And when we analyze the economy, we need to look at the right metrics. There are a lot of indicators out there that might be true, but can be very misleading in the wrong context. And in the story by Bloomberg, France factory rebounds to 3-year high, signaling resilience. Apparently, French manufacturing output is now at its highest level since the 2020 lockdowns. It has gone above the 100 level, which shows manufacturing growth. However, is that really the right signal to watch? Not really, because France is a service sector economy. Almost 80% of the economy is driven by the service sector. And in France, the service sector revolves heavily around retail, fashion, and the tourism industry. And with the riots going on, the beating heart of France is now facing a ton of troubles. French services activity have fallen for the first time since January. And this tells us that people are just not spending as much and the service sector is contracting. The service PMI for France has fallen from 52.5 to just 48 points in June. Anything under 50 is a contraction, plus it is a big drop. This is bad news for an economy heavily dependent on services. People aren't buying those LV bags, they aren't going for luxury dinners on a boat down the river because everyone is broke. Your rent is going up, your cost of living is also soaring. You just don't have the money to spend on luxuries. Discretionary spending is cratering, and this could crash France into a recession. According to economists at Hamburg Bank, things are looking very bad. Listen to this. It could well be that GDP in France declines in the second quarter as the service sector accounts for the largest share of French economic output. And that's why the riots in France are significant. Macron has to quell the riots and prevent new ones from popping up, or the French economy is in real trouble. People are afraid of heading to France and getting caught in the crossfire. Just look at this headline. French tourism industry suffers cancellations over violent unrest. And things are looking really bad for tourism in France. We have the United States, the UK, Canada, and even China all issuing travel warnings. So this riot could hit the French economy and hit it hard. It's not just about the billion-dollar damage. Yes, that is bad and it is a ton of money, but it's more about the perception of France as a tourist destination. If the economy slips into recession, this could spark even more riots across France and damage the tourism industry even more. It's like a self-reinforcing loop. The more riots happen, the worse the service sector will become. People start to earn less, they get pissed off, and you get the perfect conditions for more riots. So just imagine you are Macron. You see France burning. You know the economy is key. Your neighbors like Germany are contracting, and there's only so much that the United States can buy from France, right? You have to turn to the Chinese. You have to build more trade relations with the BRICS nations. And that's why it is not a coincidence that Macron is pushing hard for strategic autonomy. According to him, the great risk Europe faces is getting caught up in crises that are not ours. France has already cut themselves away from cheap Russian energy. They can't afford to move away or decouple from China now. It will be a disaster. And we need to understand why. The French economy has a spending problem. Government spending is out of control. And check this out. In 2022, French public spending hit 58% of the country's GDP. It is the highest in the Eurozone. That is insane. It means the government itself is the biggest customer of the French economy. Even the US government only accounts for 37% of America's GDP. But the story actually gets worse. Since 2008, France has been spending more than their national revenues. We can see that their spending in light blue is more than their revenues in black. That is a lot of deficit spending. France has been burning a lot of money on social benefits, and to do that, their taxes are extremely high. And we know that Europe loves to impose high taxes on their citizens for all the welfare programs. It is what it is. But the tax rates in France are just out of this world. It's really mind-boggling. Compared to the rest of the Eurozone, France's tax to GDP is around 45%. And they are number 2 on this list, above Finland and Sweden and just under Denmark. Even America is only at 24%. This means overall, the French government controls a lot of the country's wealth. A ton of money is paid to the government. So let's say you're an average income earner and you bring home 60,000 euros a year. Your tax rate is already at 30%. That's almost a third gone. And if you earn 80 grand, your tax rate climbs to a crazy 41%. And do you really feel like spending money after taking the hit, especially in today's inflation crisis? And that's why France can't rely on their own domestic consumption. They need foreigners to come in and spend. they need to export stuff to other countries. And to keep the welfare state going, France has to keep trading with the rest of the world. That's why Macron, he's building closer relations with China. It's also why he invited MBS to Paris to talk business with Saudi Arabia. He is simply following the money. He's trying to keep France afloat. Now, here's the fascinating part. What does this mean for the Russia-Ukraine conflict? If more G7 countries start to crack, will this affect the situation? Because if more countries slip into a recession, how long can they keep sending money into a black hole? And in a poll conducted by the EU, they surveyed support for the war, and the results are extremely surprising. And let's just focus on France. In 2022, 20% of the French believe that the most important thing is to punish Russia, while 41% want the war to end as soon as possible. So there's more support for peace than war last year. But in 2023, 9 months later, the situation has actually gotten worse. It is the exact opposite of what many of us thought. Only 31% of the French want conflict to end fast. In contrast, 35% now believe Ukraine needs to regain all their territory, even at the cost of a longer war. And this is very bad news because it shows both the EU and Russia are going to dig in deep for the battle. Countries like France, Germany, and Poland are still pledging long-term support for Ukraine. Neither side wants to give ground, even if the economy goes up in flames. So we gotta prepare, guys. Even if we enter recession, chances are more deficit spending will continue, and inflation is not gonna end. Both sides are gonna duke it out until the bitter end. So hang tight for a war of high inflation and even higher interest rates. Even a global recession won't stop this chaos. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Will France really manage to dodge a recession? And what is Macron gonna do next? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through this crazy time.